When my own son looked me in the eye and said, "You've had your time, Dad. It's mine now," something inside me broke. It wasn't just about the land he sold. It was the years, the trust, the love I'd poured into him, traded away for $2 million. I thought I'd lost everything that day, but I was wrong. I hadn't lost. It was just the beginning of finding out who I really was. Before we dive into today's story, I recommend you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink, because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Dawn came slow across the eastern Colorado plains, spreading a thin silver light over 1,200 acres of wheat that belonged to the Mercer name for 3 generations. I woke before the sun as I always did, brewed a pot of strong black coffee, and stood on the back porch watching the mist roll low across the furrows. The smell of wet earth rose like something holy. Out in the shed, the old John Deere waited, paint faded to the color of dry moss, but its engine still had the same steady cough my father taught me to love. I'm 67, and my body keeps the rhythm of this land better than any clock. The soil remembers hands, even after they have grown stiff. Every morning I check the irrigation pump, mark the water flow in a notebook, and listen to the soft pulse of the ditch that keeps this place alive. On my left hand glints the same gold band I put there 42 years ago, the one Laura never took off. She's been gone 4 years now, but I still talk to her when the sun breaks over the barn roof. The house hasn't changed. Her quilts hang on the line, her piano gathers dust in the corner of the living room, and her perfume lingers faintly in the hall when the air is damp. Some evenings I set 2 plates on the kitchen table before realizing what I've done. That kind of habit sticks to you. My son, Ryan, doesn't come around much. He's 36, wears suits that cost more than my tractor, and works for some investment firm in Denver. When he calls, it's quick. 10 minutes about markets and city traffic, never about weather or the crop. His wife, Savannah, talks like the world spins only when she posts about it online. They sent me a Christmas card last year, printed in gold foil, but forgot to sign it. Bud Lawson, my neighbor and closest friend, stops by most mornings. He's the sort who measures time by coffee pots. "Price of wheat's up this season," he said today, leaning on the railing. "Chom a chack, old man." I smiled at that. Laura used to say the same thing, I told him. He laughed, tapped his hat, and drove off in his dust-colored pickup. When his engine faded, the only sound left was the wind combing through the wheat. The fields look endless from the porch. The red barn lists a little, its paint peeling into flakes the color of rusted pennies. Every dent in the metal roof carries a story. A hailstorm in '83, the tornado that missed us by half a mile, the year Ryan carved his initials into the door and swore he'd never leave. I still run my hand over those letters sometimes, rough and shallow, like a promise that couldn't take root. A letter from the county bank sits on the kitchen table, unopened. The envelope says, "Notice of change in contact information." I didn't ask for any change, probably a clerical error, I tell myself, but the unease crawls up my spine anyway. I slide it under the ledger book with the month's receipts and promise to read it later. There's always later until there isn't. The afternoon turns amber. I grease the combine, feed the barn cat, and watch clouds drag their shadows across the stubble fields. The air tastes of dust and diesel. Out beyond the fence line, the highway hums faintly, Denver's direction, where my son's world moves fast and loud. I wonder if he ever thinks of the land that raised him, or if the sound of wind through wheat has already slipped from his memory. When dusk comes, I sit on the porch with a second cup of coffee gone cold. The sign at the gate reads Mercer Farm since 1921. One of its nails has come loose, so the board tilts slightly, creaking each time the wind shifts. I make a note to fix it tomorrow. Then I look west, where the sky burns down to brass and the road disappears into it. Somewhere beyond that horizon is my boy. Somewhere beyond it waits a storm I can't yet see. If you're still watching and feeling that sting of betrayal right along with me, comment number 1 below so I know you're with me. Things are about to unravel in ways no one saw coming. The rumble of an unfamiliar engine broke the stillness that usually guarded my afternoons. I was fixing a loose valve on the irrigation line when a black SUV turned off the county road and rolled up the dirt drive, tires kicking a trail of dust that hung in the dry air like smoke. Even before the door opened, I knew the sound didn't belong here. It was too smooth, too polished for the country. Ryan stepped out first, sleeves rolled high, city sunglasses hiding his eyes. He held 2 cups of latte like they were peace offerings. Savannah followed in white heels that sank into the gravel. She pushed her glasses up, looked at the barn, the wheat fields, the windmill that hadn't spun since last summer, and said, "It's cute out here," like an old movie set. I wiped my hands on my jeans and met them halfway. "Didn't know you were coming." "Surprise visit," Ryan said brightly. "You've been on my mind, Dad." "Brought your favorite, double vanilla latte." I took the cup, felt the warmth through the cardboard sleeve, and already knew it wasn't mine. I like my coffee black, no sugar, no fancy foam. The sweetness hit me before the first sip. We went inside. Ryan carried a leather folder, placed it on the kitchen table, and opened it with the flourish of a salesman. The cover read Blue Mesa Development in silver letters. Inside were glossy maps and aerial photos showing neat rectangles where my uneven wheat rows should have been. "These folks specialize in sustainable housing," he began. "They'll pay $2 million cash for this land. You can retire somewhere comfortable, golf, medical care, all that. They even have a lake view." Savannah smiled like a realtor closing a deal. "It's the kind of opportunity people dream about, Mr. Mercer. No more worrying about chores." I looked at the maps. The red grid lines cut straight through the Mercer fields, through the barn, the chicken run, even Laura's lilac bushes. "And where do you fit in all this, son?" I asked quietly. Ryan's smile didn't falter. "I'll oversee the transition. Blue Mesa needs a local signature to handle the sale, and it'll look better if we keep it in the family. You just sign a few insurance audit papers so we can process the deal cleanly." He slid a short stack toward me, paper-clipped and neatly notarized. The heading read, "Crop Insurance Verification." The pages looked official enough, seals, signatures, even my name typed perfectly. But something about the weight of them felt wrong, like they were heavier than paper should be. I didn't touch the pen. "I'd like to read these first." "Of course," he said too quickly. "Just don't wait too long. The buyers are moving fast." Savannah checked her watch and stood. "Ryan, we should go. Traffic back to Denver's a nightmare." They started for the door. I followed them to the porch, the latte still in my hand, now cold and sticky. Savannah leaned close to Ryan but spoke loud enough for me to hear. "He really shouldn't live out here alone." The car rolled away in a swirl of dust. I stood until the sound faded, then went back inside. The house felt emptier than before, like they'd taken the air with them. The folder sat on the table, still open. I noticed a faint imprint of Ryan's handwriting in pencil on the back page. 2M Escrow, Close Friday. My throat tightened. The setting sun slanted through the window, glinting off the unopened envelope from the county bank. I pulled it out, tore it open, and read the first line twice. "Dear Mr. Mercer, this is to confirm your request to authorize Ryan Mercer as your representative on all accounts effective immediately." Representative. My hand went numb. I hadn't requested anything. The letter went on to list my check, savings, and property tax accounts, all showing shared access. I sat down hard in the wooden chair, the same one Laura used to polish every Saturday. The sound of it scraping the floor echoed through the kitchen. For a long moment, I could only stare at the folder on the table. The words Blue Mesa Development shimmered crimson in the fading light, and the reflection made it look like the letters were bleeding. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the loose sign at the gate. The air smelled of dust and betrayal. Somewhere, far down the road to Denver, my son was driving fast, thinking he'd already won. If you're still watching and sensing that something bigger is hiding beneath the surface, drop a number 2 in the comments, because what's coming next will change everything. Morning broke calm and gold. the kind that usually meant a good harvest day. I woke before the alarm, brewed my coffee black, and tried to shake off the unease from the day before. Maybe Ryan had exaggerated the paperwork. Maybe I had misread that bank letter. The smell of soil after dawn was still my anchor. The world, for a fleeting moment, felt normal again. Then I heard it. The hum of engines, more than one. I stepped onto the porch, coffee mug in hand, as a convoy rolled through the gate. A sheriff's cruiser, a silver SUV, and a truck marked Blue Mesa Development. Dust clouded the early light, and something cold settled in my chest. Sheriff Cole Ramirez climbed out first. I knew him. His father had hauled wheat for me back in the 90s. Behind him came a sharp-looking woman in a gray suit, carrying a clipboard and an envelope sealed with the county logo. "Morning, Mr. Mercer," Ramirez said, keeping his tone careful. "We're here to supervise a property transfer." "Property what?" I asked. The woman adjusted her glasses. "According to our records, the Mercer farm was sold last Friday to Blue Mesa Development. We're here to confirm the transition and document personal belongings for insurance purposes." My hand tightened around the coffee mug. "That's impossible." She opened the envelope, showing a document with my name at the top. Power of attorney, Caleb Mercer to Ryan Mercer. My signature curved neatly across the bottom. "These papers authorized your son to act on your behalf," she said matter-of-factly. "That's not my signature." My voice came out thin, strangled. Ramirez sighed, the way men do when duty presses heavier than empathy. "Caleb, they've got notarized copies, county filings, and banking verification. Until a court says otherwise, it's binding." The coffee slipped from my hand, shattering on the steps. Hot liquid splashed across my boots, but I barely felt it. A horn sounded. Ryan's SUV rolled up behind the others. He stepped out in his city suit, face calm as a pond in winter. "Dad, I was going to explain," he started, hands raised like a preacher's. "I didn't want this to be a surprise." I stared at him. "You sold my land?" "Our land," he corrected softly. "You signed the authorization, remember?" "I only finalized the deal. $2 million, Dad. You'll never have to worry again." "I never—" My throat closed. The woman from Blue Mesa held out another page, closing documents stamped and dated. I recognized the notary seal from the county office. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Ryan moved closer, lowering his voice. "It's done, Dad. Don't fight it. I'll make sure you're taken care of." "You already did that," I said quietly, "when you took everything I cared about." Savannah appeared beside him, her perfume sharp against the dust. "You'll feel better once you settle somewhere safe," she said with practiced pity. Ramirez cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer, they'll give you 72 hours to gather personal items. I'll be back Wednesday to check." I wanted to yell, to grab Ryan by the collar like when he was a boy and shake sense into him. But the sight of Ramirez's hand resting on his belt stopped me. The law was no longer on my side. A pickup roared down the dirt road and skidded to a stop. Bud Lawson jumped out, red-faced and panting. "Cole, what the hell's this about?" "Stay back, Bud," Ramirez warned. "I'm following procedure." Bud jabbed a finger toward the paperwork. "That's not a court order. You can't evict a man without one." The woman replied coolly. "It's a voluntary handover, sir." "The property sale is complete voluntary, my ass," Bud muttered. He turned to me. "You didn't sign a damn thing, did you?" I shook my head, too numb for anger. By evening, my truck was loaded with 2 suitcases, a duffel of tools, and the box of Laura's keepsakes. I drove 20 miles south to the Sunset Motor Inn, the cheapest place that still felt halfway clean. The neon sign flickered outside my window like a dying heartbeat. I sat on the stiff bedspread, staring at the calloused hands that once built fences, raised barns, paid debts, all for a son who'd traded loyalty for profit. Somewhere out there, Ryan was celebrating his deal, convincing himself it was for the best. I whispered to the dark, "If the land remembers, it'll know who betrayed it." Then I reached into my jacket pocket, felt the cold shape of the safe deposit key, my last secret, my last defense, and made myself a promise. Tomorrow, I'd start fighting back. If you're still here and can feel the tension building, leave a number 3 below. The storm you've been waiting for is about to hit harder than anyone expects. The motel sheets smelled of bleach and resignation. I woke before dawn, staring at the stained ceiling tiles, wondering how many other men had lost everything before ending up here. The coffee maker in the corner sputtered like an old tractor, filling the air with a burnt aroma that did nothing to wake my spirit. I counted the cash in my wallet, $182 and some loose change. That was what 40 years of labor had come down to. I showered in lukewarm water, dressed, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the safe deposit key resting in my palm. Laura would have told me to fight. She always said, "The world can take what you build, Caleb, but not what you believe." I didn't feel like believing much of anything, but I knew one truth. Ryan thought I was finished. That alone was reason enough to get up. By 8, Bud Lawson showed up in his dusty pickup, 2 cups of diner coffee in hand. "Brought you the good stuff," he said, placing one on the table. He also handed me the Mesa County Chronicle. The front page headline hit me like a hammer. Blue Mesa announces Mercer Field's project. $2 million land acquisition complete. Below it, Ryan stood smiling in a photo, beside a woman in a navy suit, handshakes all around. I read it twice before the words sank in. "He's proud," I muttered, voice low. Bud scratched his chin. "He's sold his soul. That's what he's done." I got someone who might help. Remember Ellen Park? She handled Laura's insurance years ago. Sharp woman, doesn't scare easy. That afternoon, we drove to the county seat. Ellen's office was tucked between a thrift store and a tax service. Faded blinds, old certificates on the wall, a clock that ticked too loud. She looked up from her desk when we entered, gray hair tied back, eyes alert. "Caleb Mercer," she said slowly. "Didn't think I'd see you outside a harvest festival. What happened?" I told her everything. Ryan, the forged power of attorney, the sheriff, the eviction. She listened without interrupting, then asked for the documents. Under the desk lamp, she examined the signatures through a magnifier. "This isn't a simple forgery," she murmured. "Someone accessed a notarized digital file. That takes authorization from a licensed registry." "In English?" I asked. "It means whoever did this had help from inside the system. Possibly from Blue Mesa's legal team." Her words sat heavy in the air. Ellen pulled on her coat. "Let's go to the county archive. I want to see what's been officially filed." The records office smelled of toner and dust. The clerk on duty scrolled through her screen and frowned. "The file you're requesting is restricted," she said, "sealed by the attorney representing Blue Mesa Development." Ellen leaned forward. "That's not standard practice." "Special order from the registrar," the clerk replied, avoiding eye contact. We left with nothing but frustration. Outside, the winter wind clawed across the parking lot. Ellen crossed her arms. "They're closing ranks. It's bigger than a family dispute, Caleb. Blue Mesa's laundering transactions through your property." I gritted my teeth. They stole my land, and now they're hiding behind paperwork. "We'll need proof," she said calmly. "Something that shows coercion or false identity. Give me a few days. I'll dig." That night, I returned to the motel with takeout that tasted like cardboard and exhaustion. I sat at the desk, rereading the bank letter, tracing the forged signature that looked too much like mine. I almost didn't notice the email that appeared on my old account. No subject line, no sender name. "Your son didn't act alone. Look into the escrow documents." Page 7. A friend. I stared at the glowing screen, heart pounding. Who the hell was this friend? I printed the message on the motel's creaking copier and slipped it into a folder for Ellen. It could be bait, or it could be the first crack in the wall they'd built around me. The next morning, a courier envelope slid under my door. Inside was a legal notice from Blue Mesa's firm. "Mr. Mercer is prohibited from entering or occupying the property known as Mercer Fields under penalty of trespass." Ellen's voice echoed in my memory. They are clearing the way to legalize everything. I stood by the window as dawn broke over the mountains, pale and cold. Somewhere out there, Ryan was sleeping soundly, thinking I'd given up. He didn't understand what kind of man had raised him. I folded the notice neatly and whispered to the rising light. If they think I'm just an old farmer who doesn't know the law, they're about to learn otherwise. If you're still watching and your heart's pounding as the walls start to close in, comment number 4 to stay with me, because the truth that's coming might just break everything open. Ellen called before sunrise. Her voice was sharper than usual, stripped of its usual calm. "You need to come to my office, Caleb. I found something." By the time I got there, the coffee on her desk had gone cold. She didn't waste time on greetings. A pile of papers lay open before her, printouts from the email I'd received. She pointed to one page marked escrow file, page 7. At the bottom were a series of numbers, routing codes, account transfers, timestamps. "These aren't normal disbursements," she said. "They sent the money through 3 banks before the sale even closed." I stared at the paper. "You mean they sold land that wasn't even theirs to sell?" Ellen nodded grimly. "Exactly. They funneled the funds offshore. If this is accurate, Blue Mesa isn't just defrauding you. They're laundering money through your property." Her words hit me like a punch to the ribs. I'd known betrayal before, but this was different. It wasn't just Ryan's greed, it was something darker. Ellen folded her glasses. "If we can get confirmation from the bank, we can take this to the state attorney. But we'll need official records, transfers, signatures, timestamps. Are you willing to go there?" "I'm done hiding," I said. Mesa First National was a cold cathedral of glass and steel, every reflection showing a man who no longer belonged. I walked across the polished floor, boots leaving faint scuffs behind me. The teller smiled until I gave my name, then her expression froze. "Mr. Mercer, I'll have the branch manager speak with you." Alan Briggs emerged from his office, looking older than I remembered. He used to share coffee with Laura at the farmer's market. Now he shook my hand like it was a liability. "Caleb," he said softly, "wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "I need to see the escrow transfers for my property," I said. "The Mercer Fields deal." He hesitated. "Those are corporate documents, not personal accounts." "Alan, you've known me 40 years. You know I didn't authorize that sale." His eyes darted toward the back office. "It's complicated. The authorization came from your power of attorney. Everything looked legitimate. Looked, I repeated. So, you never questioned it?" Before he could answer, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Ryan stood in the doorway, tailored suit, cufflinks glinting like small knives. He smiled without warmth. "You shouldn't be harassing bank employees. This isn't going to help anyone." I turned slowly. "You used my name to sell my land." He sighed as if explaining something to a stubborn child. "It was an opportunity, Dad." The farm was dying. I turned it into something valuable by breaking the law. It's not illegal, it's restructuring. You don't understand modern business." Ellen's words from earlier echoed in my head. "Laundering through property. You funneled that money somewhere offshore," I said. Ryan's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know my land was sold before the ink dried. I know your mother's name is buried under concrete because you wanted a bigger paycheck." For a moment, his mask slipped. "You think sentiment pays bills?" "This is the real world, Dad. You either adapt or get left behind, then I'll stay behind," I said quietly, "because at least I can still look at myself in the mirror." He turned away. "You'll regret this." I watched him disappear into the manager's office, the door closing like a final verdict. I was about to leave when a young clerk at the copier accidentally dropped a file folder. A few pages fluttered across the floor. One landed at my boot. Escrow audit. Account movements. Mercer transfer. Before she could gather them, I knelt and picked up the top sheet. My eyes caught the header. Transfer to Orion Trust, Cayman Islands. The date matched the day Ryan claimed the sale was finalized. I slid the page into my coat pocket and walked out without another word. When I showed Ellen the document, She read it twice, her eyes widening. "This is it, Caleb. Proof they moved the funds offshore. If this gets to the state attorney, Blue Mesa's finished." Thunder rolled outside, low and distant. Rain streaked the office windows like ink. I watched the storm gather over the mountains and felt something inside me harden. "Keep this safe," Ellen warned. "They'll come after you if they know you have it." I looked at the rain carving lines down the glass. Let them come. For the first time, I've got something they can't buy. The storm rolled in just after midnight, thunder cracking over the desert like a warning. I sat at the small motel desk, the lamp flickering, papers spread before me. The escrow audit printout glowed faintly under the yellow light, the ink still smelling like toner. Outside, the rain came in sheets, washing the world clean. Or maybe just hiding its sins. I'd spent hours staring at the numbers, offshore accounts, shell companies, the name Orion Trust repeating like a curse. Every figure was another piece of proof that my land had been used to wash dirty money. It should have felt like a victory, finding the truth. Instead, it felt like holding a loaded gun I didn't know how to fire. Then came the knock. Ellen's voice broke through the sound of rain. "Caleb, open up, it's me." Her coat was soaked, hair plastered to her face. She looked 10 years older than she had that morning. "Someone broke into my office," she said, catching her breath. "They were looking for the escrow files. I found my desk drawers emptied. They know Caleb." I motioned for her to come in. "Then we don't have much time." She closed the door behind her, dripping water on the carpet. "Listen to me. We need to go to the state attorney right now. We hand over everything. Your copies, the printouts, all of it. Let them handle it before this turns into something worse." "Worse?" I asked quietly. "What's worse than losing your land, your name, your son?" She sighed. "Getting killed for trying to fight the wrong people." I rubbed a hand across my jaw, feeling the roughness of stubble and exhaustion. "How long do you think the law will take, Ellen? A month? A year? Ryan and those vultures at Blue Mesa will bury everything before anyone blinks." "That's the risk," she said. "But at least you'll still be alive to see justice done." I almost laughed. "Justice? You still believe in that?" For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rain battered the window, lightning flashed across the distant hills. I thought of Laura, how she'd always believed in doing things the right way, even when life didn't play fair. Her voice still lived somewhere in my memory. "Don't let them teach our son that money is the only thing that matters." Ellen's phone buzzed. She frowned and turned the screen toward me. The message had no name, just a number and 4 words. "Deleting bank logs tonight. Midnight." We looked at each other, realization dawning like the first crack of dawn through the storm. "If they erase those records," she whispered, "the trail's gone. Everything we have becomes circumstantial." I felt the decision forming before I spoke it. "Then we don't wait." Ellen shook her head. "Caleb, no. You can't do this alone." "I've been alone since the day Ryan signed my name. You're talking about breaking into a corporate building. That's suicide." I met her eyes. "No, Ellen. It's closure." She started to protest again, but stopped when she saw my face. I folded the documents carefully, slipped them into a plastic sleeve, and tucked it into my coat. The motel room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating, like the walls themselves were eavesdropping. Ellen placed a hand on my arm. "At least let me call Ramirez. He still owes me a favor." "If you call him, he'll stop me," I said. "You go to him tomorrow morning. Tell him everything. But tonight, I get what we need." Lightning illuminated her face, fear, pity, maybe respect. "You're not the man I met last week," she whispered. "No," I said, reaching for the truck keys. "That man thought the world was fair." Outside, the rain had thickened into a curtain. I walked to the truck, boots splashing through puddles, the storm wind cutting through my jacket. The road shimmered ahead, silver and endless. In the passenger seat lay the manila folder labeled Escrow Audit. Beneath it, the cold metal of my old hunting rifle gleamed faintly under the dashboard light. As I started the engine, thunder rumbled again, closer this time, like the earth itself was warning me to turn back. But there was no turning back. Not anymore. This wasn't about a farm or a bank statement or even revenge. It was about truth, the kind you fight for when everything else is gone. I pressed my foot to the gas and whispered into the rain, "Let them come." The truck disappeared down the soaked highway, taillights fading into the storm. If you're still here and you can feel the weight of the decision ahead, type number 5 in the comments, because the choice that's about to be made will change everything forever. The storm hadn't slowed when I reached Blue Mesa's headquarters. The rain came sideways, pelting the glass facade like 1,000 fists. The sign over the entrance flickered blue, the words Blue Mesa Development glowing and dying in rapid pulses. I parked behind a row of trees, killed the headlights, and sat for a moment listening to the engine tick down. My heart was a hammer in my chest. "You built your empire on lies, son," I whispered. "Let's see how it looks when the truth hits." The back door was unlatched, lazy security or arrogant confidence. Either way, it opened for me. I stepped inside, the air cold and sterile, the faint hum of computers echoing through the empty halls. The lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of ozone mixed with wet carpet. I followed the signs toward the server room, my boots leaving small puddles on the tile. The door to the data floor required a badge, but the cleaning crew had left a cart wedged in the frame. I slipped through. The hum grew louder, rows of metal cabinets blinking with blue lights like fireflies in a steel cage. I found the console labeled Financial Server, Orion Division. My hands shook as I plugged in the small flash drive Ellen had given me. On the screen, a directory appeared. Escrow accounts, greater than offshore transfers, greater than Orion Trust. I clicked, and the data began to copy. Each file name felt like a nail in Ryan's coffin. A voice behind me froze the blood in my veins. "I thought you might try something stupid like this." Ryan stepped out from the shadows, perfectly dry, as if the storm outside couldn't touch him. His suit was sharp, his hair slicked back, a faint smirk on his lips. "You really think you can undo what's already done?" I turned slowly, hands trembling. "You used my name to wash dirty money." He chuckled. "You gave me your name, Dad. I just made it worth something." "Worth something?" I snapped. "You turned it into a stain." He moved closer, eyes cold. "You raised me to survive. That's all I did." "I raised you to have a conscience," Ryan scoffed. "Conscience doesn't pay the bills. You still think the world runs on morals and hard work? Wake up, it runs on leverage." He reached for the USB still blinking in the console. I stepped between him and the computer. "You don't touch that." "Step aside," he said, voice flat. When I didn't move, he shoved me. I hit the metal cabinet hard, the pain flashing through my shoulder. The USB popped loose, skittering across the floor. "Dad, you're finished," he said. "You should have stayed quiet." Before he could pick it up, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Sirens wailed outside. A shout followed. "Mesa County Sheriff! Step away from the computer." Ryan froze. Ellen burst in first, soaked to the bone, her face pale but fierce. Behind her came Sheriff Ramirez, gun drawn. "Step back, Ryan," Ramirez barked. "Hands where I can see them." Ryan raised his hands slowly, jaw tight. "This isn't what it looks like." Ellen's voice trembled, but her eyes burned with fury. "It looks exactly like what it is: fraud, theft, and money laundering." She picked up the flash drive, holding it up like a trophy. "This file is enough to bring down every one of you." Ryan glared at me. "You called them." I shook my head. "No, Ellen did. I just gave them a reason to believe." Ramirez cuffed him, reading his rights as 2 officers entered and began securing the building. For the first time, Ryan looked small, just a man who'd traded his soul for a deal that finally went bad. When they led him past me, he stopped for a second. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You've destroyed everything." I looked him in the eye. "No, son. You did that yourself." He didn't speak again. The adrenaline drained from my body, leaving me trembling. I sank into a chair, rainwater pooling at my boots, my arm throbbing where I'd hit the cabinet. Ellen crouched beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder. You got justice, Caleb. But was it worth it? I watched the lightning flicker through the window, painting the world in brief, brutal clarity. Ask me when the rain stops. Outside, dawn was breaking. The storm began to ease, the sky torn open with streaks of gold. Blue Mesa's glowing sign went dark as the power finally failed. I closed my eyes, whispering, Laura, it's done. The morning after the storm was strangely quiet. The air smelled of wet earth and asphalt, and the sky was the pale blue of a world washed clean. From the window of my hospital room, I could see the Blue Mesa building in the distance, wrapped in yellow police tape that fluttered like tattered flags. The empire my son had built now stood hollow, gutted from the inside. My right arm was bandaged where glass had torn it. The nurse said I was lucky it wasn't worse. Lucky, I thought. That word didn't mean what it used to. The TV above my bed crackled with morning news. A serious-looking anchor spoke into the camera. Breaking. Blue Mesa development executives are under investigation for financial fraud and money laundering. Founder Ryan Mercer was taken into custody last night after a police raid uncovered evidence of illegal offshore transactions. Sources confirmed the property known as Mercer Fields was central to the scheme. My son's name filled the room. I turned down the volume but couldn't silence it in my head. I'd wanted justice, and now I had it, just not the kind I imagined. The door opened softly. Ellen walked in carrying 2 coffees. She looked tired, but her smile was gentle. You look better sitting up, she said, setting 1 cup on the table. I've had worse hangovers, I replied, though my voice sounded hollow. She handed me the newspaper. The headline read, Mercer father exposes fraud ring. Blue Mesa collapses overnight. Ellen sat by the bed. You did what most people wouldn't dare. You made them face the truth. I stared at the photo of Ryan being led away in handcuffs. I didn't win, Ellen, I said quietly. I just survived. She nodded. Sometimes that's enough. We sat in silence for a long time. The rain had stopped, but its memory still lingered in the smell of damp concrete and the steady drip from the eaves outside. For the first time in months, I felt something close to calm, and guilt followed right behind it. I remembered Ryan as a boy, mud on his boots, laughter echoing across the fields. Dad, he once asked, when you're gone, can I keep the farm forever? I told him yes, I meant it. Somewhere between that promise and the man he became, something in both of us broke. The knock at the door startled me. A woman in a gray suit entered carrying a folder. Mr. Mercer? I'm with the state attorney's office. I wanted to inform you that the Mercer Fields transaction has been nullified. The court has restored ownership to you pending final review. I blinked, unsure what to say. So, it's mine again? She smiled. Yes, sir. Legally and fully yours. When she left, I laughed, quiet, disbelieving. Ellen tilted her head. That's good news, Caleb. Yeah, I said, looking at my hands. Guess the land outlived us all. She reached for her coffee, her eyes thoughtful. You could lease part of it. Keep the rest wild. Maybe turn it into something that gives back. I turned that over in my mind. The idea of doing something good, something not poisoned by greed, sounded right. Maybe it's time the land gave life instead of taking it, I said. A few days later, Ellen drove me back to the farm. The field stretched wide and empty, the soil still dark from the storm. I stood at the fence line, breathing in the scent of mud and rain. The old farmhouse was gone. Blue Mesa had torn it down, but the earth remained. I knelt, scooped a handful of dirt, and felt it crumble between my fingers. It was heavier than I remembered, but alive. Ellen walked up carrying a small potted tree. Fig tree, she said with a smile, for new beginnings. We dug together in silence. My bandaged arm ached, but it felt good to work the soil again. When the tree stood upright, roots tucked in, I whispered, for Laura, and maybe for what's left of us. Ellen pressed the soil down around the base. For the truth that finally saw daylight, she said. The sun broke through the clouds then, warm and steady. It caught on the new leaves of the fig tree, turning them gold. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't dared hope for. Peace, fragile but real. I thought I lost everything, I said. Turns out, I just had to start again. Ellen smiled. Then let's start. The wind moved through the fields, soft and forgiving, carrying the scent of new earth and quiet redemption. If you're still watching and you sense that calm before the dawn, drop a number 6 below. What follows isn't revenge anymore, it's redemption in its purest form. The morning sun slipped through the thin curtains of my kitchen window, glinting off the stack of unopened envelopes that had been piling up all week. I'd been avoiding them. Legal documents, settlement papers, things that marked the end of a fight I'd never wanted. But that morning, Ellen arrived with a thermos of coffee and a quiet smile. "It's from the court," she said, setting a large manila envelope on the table. "Final ruling." I stared at it. My hands didn't move. "Go ahead," she urged softly. The paper inside was crisp, heavy, official. The state of New Mexico hereby recognizes Caleb Mercer as the sole legal owner of the property known as Mercer Fields. I read it twice. Then there was another line. All assets associated with Blue Mesa Development are subject to forfeiture to the victim of fraud. "It's over, Caleb," Ellen said. I folded the document neatly and placed it back in the envelope. "Not yet," I murmured. She looked at me with that knowing look she had, the one that said she'd already guessed my next move. "You're going to see him, aren't you?" I nodded. There's no peace until I do. The road to Santa Rosa Correctional was long and straight, stretching across open desert. The radio played softly. Old country songs, Laura's favorites. "Take Me Home," Country Roads came on, and for a few miles I let the sound fill the silence. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered, but steadier too. When I reached the prison, the sky was the color of steel. The guard at the gate took my ID, scanned it, and said, "He's been expecting you." The visitation room was colder than I imagined. Cinder block walls, a single table bolted to the floor, 2 metal chairs. The fluorescent lights hummed above. Then the door opened and Ryan stepped in. He looked nothing like the man who'd walked into Blue Mesa that last day. No suit, no confidence, no mask. Just my son, thinner, hollow-eyed, wearing a faded orange jumpsuit. He hesitated before sitting. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. "I didn't come to forgive you," I replied. "I came to understand why." He let out a shaky breath. "At first, it was about the money. I told myself it was business, that I was modernizing what you'd built. But then," his voice cracked, "then it became about proving I wasn't like you." I leaned back, the words hitting harder than I expected. "And what did you prove? That I'm not strong enough to be you," he said quietly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt heavy, like the walls themselves were listening. Ryan's eyes filled, but he didn't look away this time. I saw flashes of the boy he once was. The boy who had followed me through the fields, proud to carry a bucket of feed, calling me his hero. I wanted to say I was sorry for my part, for the silence, the distance. But the words wouldn't come, maybe because they wouldn't change anything. "I don't hate you, Ryan," I said finally. "But I can't carry you anymore." He swallowed hard. "Tell Mom I'm sorry." "She already knows," I said. He nodded, head bowed, and for the first time since this all began, I saw surrender in his shoulders, not the kind that breaks a man, but the kind that might, someday, let him rebuild. The guard signaled that our time was up. I stood slowly. Ryan didn't look up as I left. I paused at the doorway, wanting to say something more, something fatherly, comforting. But all I managed was, "Take care of yourself." Outside, the late afternoon sun burned low on the horizon. The wind had that early autumn bite, carrying the scent of dust and change. I drew a deep breath. For the first time in years, it didn't hurt to exhale. Driving home, the world felt wider. I passed stretches of land that once belonged to neighbors long gone, and it struck me how everything eventually returns to the earth: titles, money, pride, even regret. When I reached Mercer Fields, the sky was painted gold. The small fig tree Ellen and I had planted weeks ago stood near the fence, its leaves trembling in the breeze. I walked over, knelt beside it, and dug a shallow hollow at its base. From my pocket, I took Laura's wedding ring, simple silver, worn smooth from decades of use, and placed it in the soil. "It's done, my love," I whispered. "You can rest now." I covered the ring with earth, pressing it down gently. Then I just sat there, watching the sunset spread across the fields. The land looked alive again, new shoots of grass rising through the scars of bulldozed dirt. Behind me, Ellen's truck rolled to a stop. She climbed out, hands in her jacket pockets. "You did it," she said softly. "No," I replied. "I just stopped fighting what needed to end." She smiled faintly. "That's what peace looks like." We stood together as the last light faded. The fig tree swayed, small but unbroken, and I felt the weight of generations settle into something lighter, something like grace. I didn't know if Ryan would ever change. Maybe prison would make him bitter, or maybe it would finally make him humble. That wasn't my burden anymore. Mine was to keep living, keep building, and maybe, just maybe, to forgive. As the first stars appeared over the desert, I turned toward the farmhouse, the lights glowing warm through the windows. For once, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. 6 months had passed since I last saw my son. The seasons had turned, painting Mercer Fields in a palette of gold and green. The fig tree Ellen and I planted now stood taller than my shoulder, its roots steady, its leaves full. Every morning, sunlight filtered through them and spilled onto the porch like a blessing. I sat there one morning with a cup of coffee steaming in my hand, and my old leather journal open before me. The pages smelled faintly of earth and tobacco, my past bound in paper. The farm was quiet except for the distant hum of wind through the fields. For the first time in decades, silence didn't ache, it comforted. I picked up my pen and began to write. "To whoever finds this after I'm gone, wealth means nothing if you lose your soul earning it." I used to believe love made a man weak, but I've learned the truth. It's the only thing that keeps you standing when everything else falls away. The words came slowly at first, hesitant like an old horse finding its pace, then steady as the rhythm of my heart. I wrote about Laura, how she taught me that strength wasn't the absence of fear, but the courage to stay kind. I wrote about the land, how it could both give and take everything if you didn't respect it. And I wrote about Ryan, my son, my pride, my deepest wound. My boy thought money made him powerful. I thought love made me powerless. We were both wrong. Power means nothing without mercy. And love, if it's real, survives even when it's not returned. I paused, staring out at the fields. The fences gleamed from a fresh coat of paint, and a few cattle grazed lazily under the new barn roof. Ellen had convinced me to lease part of the land to young farmers starting out. In exchange, I kept a small piece of the old Mercer Fields for a different purpose: teaching, not owning. 2 months earlier, we'd registered the Mercer Foundation for honest farming. The mission was simple: to help older farmers who'd lost their land to scams, bad contracts, or family betrayal. Ellen managed the paperwork. I handled the people. We'd already helped 5 families reclaim their titles. Seeing their faces, relief mixed with disbelief, was more healing than any therapy. "I can't fix the past," I wrote, "but I can make sure no one else lives it." Ellen stepped out onto the porch, holding a second mug. "Writing again?" she asked. I nodded. "Trying to leave something behind that's worth keeping." She smiled and sat beside me, her gaze following the sunrise. "That's what you're doing, Caleb. You're turning pain into soil." The breeze rustled the fig tree, scattering small shadows across the porch. For a while, we sat in silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. A few weeks earlier, I'd received a letter from Ryan. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. "Dad, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I see now what I destroyed, what I became. I'm working in the prison's agricultural program. They call it restitution, but for me, it's redemption. I plant, I harvest, and I think about the man I could have been if I had just stayed beside you in those fields. He signed it, your son, Ryan. I read it 3 times before folding it carefully and tucking it into this same journal. I didn't write back. Some apologies don't need answers, they just need to exist. Later that afternoon, Ellen joined me in the field. The air shimmered with heat, cicadas buzzing in the distance. She carried a small shovel. "Time to prune the fig tree," she said, smiling. As we trimmed the lower branches, I caught sight of the ring I'd buried months ago. The rain had washed away some soil, and a glint of gold shone through. I brushed the dirt off gently. "Funny," I said. "It started as a memory of pain. Now it's shade for everything that comes after Ellen rested her hand on my shoulder. That's what healing looks like, Caleb." We finished pruning, then sat under the tree's growing shadow. The world around us was alive. The steady pulse of summer, the hum of bees, the smell of cut grass. I closed my eyes, listening to the heartbeat of the land. "If you've ever been betrayed by those you love," I wrote later that evening, "don't let it turn your heart to stone. Let it teach you what gold really is. It's not money, it's peace. It's the freedom to stand tall without bitterness. It's the power to forgive without forgetting." The sun dipped low, turning the sky a soft amber. I finished the last page of my journal, then closed it gently. The leather creaked, warm under my fingers. I placed it on the porch table, where the light from the window spilled across its worn cover. Tomorrow, Ellen and I would drive to a nearby town to meet a family fighting to keep their farm. We'd bring coffee, contracts, and hope, the new currency of my life. As the first stars appeared, I took one last look at Mercer Fields. The wind whispered through the fig leaves, carrying the faint scent of growth and forgiveness. "Sometimes losing everything," I whispered to the night, "is how you finally learn what truly belongs to you." And for the first time, I believed it. In the quiet that follows every storm, there's a stillness that feels almost sacred. It's the moment when the world exhales, when broken branches stop falling, when the dust begins to settle, and what's left standing is what truly matters. Life, for all its noise and cruelty, always returns to that silence. In it, we find the truth that's been there all along. Loss is not the end. It's the clearing through which we finally see what's real. Every betrayal carries a lesson that can't be taught any other way. It strips away illusion, pride, and all the fragile things we thought were solid. It reveals the difference between ownership and belonging, between success and peace. Many spend their years building monuments to themselves, houses, legacies, bank accounts, only to discover, when everything collapses, that what they were really searching for was meaning. There's a strange grace in being broken. Pain humbles what arrogance once protected. It burns through false comfort until all that remains is the essence of who we are. And in that exposed place, the smallest things, kindness, honesty, decency, become sacred again. When everything familiar is gone, we start to see the beauty in what cannot be stolen: integrity, love freely given, forgiveness that costs us something. We live in a world that celebrates victory but rarely honors endurance. Yet, it's endurance, the quiet persistence to keep standing, to rebuild from ashes, that defines real strength. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is to keep showing up for life after it has taken everything from them. The fields that flood eventually grow green again. The heart that's been betrayed still beats, slower perhaps, but stronger for having survived. Forgiveness is not a favor we grant to those who hurt us. It's a release we grant ourselves. It's not about forgetting. It's about refusing to carry the poison forward. When we forgive, we are not saying the wound didn't matter. We're saying the wound will not define us anymore. Letting go is not weakness. It's reclaiming the power that pain tried to steal. There are people who will never understand the quiet dignity of starting over. They will mistake calm for surrender, mercy for naivete, and gentleness for fragility. But the truth is this: gentleness is what remains when fury has burned itself out. It's what grows from the soil of experience, watered by disappointment and lit by understanding. Those who have suffered deeply often become the most tender, not because they've forgotten the pain, but because they know its weight. In time, everything returns to balance. The lies unravel, the masks fall away, and what was meant to endure does. Justice doesn't always come from courts or consequences. It often comes from clarity, from knowing, without bitterness, that truth has already done its work. The heart that once ached for revenge eventually learns that peace is the greater prize. We are all caretakers of something: land, memory, love, truth. And it's not the size of what we guard that defines us, but how we guard it. The most lasting legacies are not written in deeds or bank ledgers, but in how we treat those who have less power than we do. Dignity is not inherited, it is chosen, one small act at a time. In the end, the storms of life don't erase who we are, they reveal it. When the winds die down and the noise fades, we're left with the simple, enduring truth that redemption is always possible. Not because we can undo what's been done, but because we can choose what comes next. And maybe that's the final mercy life offers us, the chance to begin again, to plant something small and living where something once was lost. To understand that the soil of pain, if tended with patience, can grow something unexpected, something strong, true, and unbreakably our own. These turning points remind us that setting boundaries and valuing ourselves is not just an act of courage, it's the foundation of living with dignity. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's one lesson from this story that you feel connected to, and how will you apply it in your own life? Let's grow together by sharing our thoughts. If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments. If not, feel free to leave a 0. Your feedback helps us improve. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and spark reflection. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life with strength, honesty, and authenticity.